The narrow, winding track, barely discernible beneath a canopy of ancient, moss-draped boughs, seemed to beckon Elias and Wren deeper into the heart of the Whisperwood thicket. Golden motes of dust danced in the sporadic sunbeams that pierced the dense foliage, illuminating a path that felt both enchanting and profoundly isolated. This was their chosen haven for a honeymoon, a deliberate escape from the relentless clamor of urban existence, a sacred space to truly commence their shared journey, their destination. The Emberwood Retreat, a secluded timbered dwelling nestled deep within the primeval embrace of the thicket, promising serenity and an undisturbed intimacy. Elias, ever the boy in spirit, clasped Wren's hand, his smile radiating an infectious joy. "Can you fathom this, my love? No digital distractions, no pressing deadlines. Just the two of us amidst this verdant majesty." Wren, a gifted artisan with an innate appreciation for natural forms, gazed out the window, her initial excitement subtly tempered by a nascent apprehension. The trees here were unlike any she had encountered. Colossal, ancient sentinels, their branches gnarled and twisted like the arthritic limbs of forgotten giants, reaching skyward. The silence was absolute, almost oppressive, a stark counterpoint to the city's ceaseless hum. It possessed an undeniable beauty, yet simultaneously exuded an unspoken gravity, a primal energy that caused a shiver to trace its way down her spine. The Emberwood Retreat, when they finally located it, was a vision of rustic perfection, constructed from dark, seasoned timber, featuring a robust stone hearth and a broad veranda overlooking a placid, mirror-like tarn. It precisely matched its advertised allure. Inside, the air was redolent with the earthy fragrance of pine and aged wood, accompanying warmth emanating from the crackling stone fireplace. Their inaugural day dissolved into a blissful haze of unpacking their belongings, discovering the dwelling's charming alcoves, and sharing tender moments by the dancing flames, the external world receding into a distant, irrelevant memory. It was an idyll, a flawless beginning, everything they had envisioned. Yet, as twilight descended, painting the firmament in bruised shades of amethyst and fiery orange, the profound stillness of the thicket began to feel less tranquil and more acutely observant. Wren was the first to perceive it, a faint, rhythmic percussive sound, barely audible, emanating from somewhere deep within the verdant depths. Elias, ever pragmatic, dismissed it as the activity of a forest creature, perhaps a diligent woodpecker, but Wren felt a distinct prickle of unease. Later, as they reclined on the veranda, savoring a vintage wine, a shadow seemed to detach itself from the distant tree line, moving with an unnatural velocity before dissolving into the deepening gloom. Elias, engrossed in their conversation, remained oblivious. Wren rationalized it as a trick of her own perception, a figment of imagination in the unfamiliar darkness. The subsequent morning, they resolved to explore their sylvan surroundings. The thicket was breathtaking, a natural sanctuary of venerable trees and fragmented sunlight. They chanced upon a narrow, overgrown track, conspicuously absent from their provided map, which led them to a secluded clearing. In its epicenter stood a derelict, almost skeletal homestead, its window apertures sealed with rough planks, its porch sagging precariously. A rusty, hand-painted placard, its lettering barely decipherable, proclaimed, "Stonehaven Clan." A cold dread permeated Wren's being. The place radiated an aura of profound wrongness, utterly desolate, yet imbued with a strange, potent energy. Elias, sensing her palpable discomfort, gently guided her away, suggesting they adhere to more established pathways. Upon their return to the Emberwood Retreat, the subtle disturbances persisted. A culinary blade, left innocently upon the counter, was discovered impaled upright in the wooden floorboards. A volume Wren had been engrossed in was found splayed open to a random page, a section she had not yet reached. Elias, steadfast in his rationalism, attributed these anomalies to faulty memory or the natural settling of the aged structure. But Wren found herself increasingly unable to shake the pervasive sensation of being observed, of unseen gazes scrutinizing their every movement. One evening, as they were engaged in the preparation of their evening meal, a resonant rap echoed to the timbered dwelling. Elias unlatched the portal to discover a man standing upon their veranda. He was tall, gaunt, with eyes that seemed to possess an ancient, unsettling wisdom, and a smile that failed to reach their depths. He introduced himself as Silas Stonehaven, their closest neighbor. He bore a woven basket containing freshly baked bread and a jar of homemade preserves, a gesture of welcome that felt oddly disquieting. His voice was low, gravelly, and his gaze lingered upon Wren for an uncomfortably extended moment. He spoke of the thicket, its rich history, and the generations of Stonehavens who had cultivated its bounty. He alluded to the ancient customs, the traditions that ensured the land's enduring prosperity. His discourse was vague, almost poetic, yet beneath its surface, Wren discerned a current of something far darker, something primordial and demanding. He extended an invitation to a communal gathering at his homestead the following eve, a bountiful feast. Elias, eager to foster neighborly relations, readily accepted. Wren felt a knot of profound dread constrict in her stomach. That night, the rhythmic percussive sound returned, amplified this time, accompanied by what sounded like faint, guttural chanting. Wren attempted to rouse Elias, but he remained in profound slumber, undisturbed by the unsettling symphony. She lay awake, listening, her heart hammering against her ribs, until the sounds gradually receded with the advent of dawn. She recounted her experience to Elias in the morning, but he dismissed it as her overactive imagination, perhaps a local wildlife phenomenon, jestingly. He was resolute in his desire to savor their honeymoon, to permit no external element to mar its perfection. As the subsequent evening approached, and they traversed the overgrown track toward the Stonehaven homestead, the air grew heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth and something else, something metallic and faintly saccharine. The homestead, which had appeared derelict in the harsh light of day, now radiated a warm, inviting luminescence. Laughter and melodic strains drifted from within, painting a tableau of rustic conviviality. Yet, as they drew nearer, Wren observed a peculiar detail. The window apertures, which he distinctly recalled as being sealed with planks, were now open, affording glimpses of a vibrant gathering. Had her memory betrayed her? Within, the Stonehaven clan presented a large, effusive assembly. There was Silas's consort, Lyra, a woman with a seemingly benevolent countenance, but eyes that held a strange, knowing glint like polished obsidian. Their progeny, a diverse brood of varying ages, moved with unsettling quietude, their gazes lingering upon Elias and Wren with an unnerving intensity. The repast was abundant, the fermented berry wine potent, and the music, rendered upon ancient stringed instruments and wind pipes, was spirited. Every individual was excessively amiable, almost aggressively so, inquiring about their lives, their aspirations, their future. Wren felt akin to an entomological specimen beneath a magnifying glass, every facet of their existence being meticulously scrutinized and catalogued. As the night progressed, the discourse gravitated towards the thicket, its inherent richness, and the boons it bestowed upon the Stonehavens. Silas expounded upon a crimson covenant, an ancient accord that guaranteed their enduring prosperity. He raised a toast, his eyes gleaming with an unholy light in the flickering hearth glow. To the bounty and to new kin, the clan echoed his pronouncement, their voices coalescing into a chilling chorus. Wren noticed a peculiar glyph carved into the robust timber beams of the homestead, a swirling, serpentine design that seemed to ride in the shifting light. It possessed an unsettling familiarity, though she found herself unable to pinpoint its origin. Later, feeling profoundly overwhelmed, Wren sought leave to utilize the outbuilding, On her return, she inadvertently took a wrong turn, finding herself behind the homestead, in proximity to a small, overgrown lean-to. A faint luminescence emanated from within. Curiosity, overriding her burgeoning fear, compelled her to peer through a narrow fissure in the wooden planks. Inside, she beheld Silas and Lyra, accompanied by several other members of the clan, congregated around a rudimentary stone altar. Upon the altar reposed a small, bound tome, its cover fashioned from what appeared to be desiccated, dark hide. Silas was engaged in a low, guttural incantation, his hands raised in supplication. Lyra clutched a gleaming, obsidian blade. And then Wren's gaze fell upon it, a fresh, dark stain upon the stone, a viscous, crimson pool. Her blood ran cold. This was no mere bountiful feast. This was a ritual. She recoiled, her heart hammering against her ribs, a nascent scream trapped in her constricted throat. She had to locate Elias. She had to depart this place. She discovered him engaged in jovial conversation with some of the younger Stonehavens, utterly oblivious to the sinister undercurrents. She seized his arm, her countenance pale, her voice a frantic whisper. "We must depart. Immediately. Something is profoundly amiss." Elias, perceiving the genuine terror etched upon her features, offered no dissent. They fabricated their excuses, citing an abrupt onset of fatigue, and commenced their hurried return journey to the Emberwood Retreat, the Stonehaven's excessively cheerful farewells echoing eerily behind them. Back at the Emberwood Retreat, they secured the portals, drew the heavy drapes, and huddled together, the warmth of the hearth doing little to dispel the profound chill that had settled deep within their beings. Wren recounted her horrifying discovery, her voice trembling with residual fear. Elias, his face grim, finally conceded the veracity of her account. The disparate pieces of the puzzle coalesced. The strained percussive sounds, the metallic scent, the overly amiable facade, the crimson covenant. They were in peril. Profound, unimaginable peril. They resolved to depart at the earliest glimmer of dawn. Yet, as they attempted to find repose, the sounds recommenced. Footfalls upon the veranda, faint whispers emanating from beyond the window panes, the rhythmic percussive sound returning, closer this time, accompanied by a low, guttural growl that seemed to reverberate through the very foundations of the timbered dwelling. Someone was outside. The Stonehavens knew. They had been aware all along. Elias, seizing a heavy iron implement from beside the hearth, peered through a narrow fissure in the drapes. He perceived nothing but the dense, impenetrable darkness of the thicket. Yet he felt gazes upon him, a multitude of them, observing, awaiting. They were encircled. Their honeymoon had transmuted into a waking nightmare. As the night wore on, the sounds intensified. Scratches upon the timber walls, the distinct resonance of something heavy being dragged across the veranda, a chilling, guttural laughter that seemed to emanate from every direction and none. Wren, huddled in Elias's embrace, experienced a primal fear she had never before encountered. They were quarry, and the Stonehavens were the relentless hunters. Just prior to the advent of dawn, the sounds abruptly ceased. An eerie silence descended upon the thicket, more terrifying than the preceding cacophony. Elias, utterly exhausted but acutely alert, understood it to be a ruse. They would not simply depart. They were biding their time, awaiting their next move. With the first sliver of nascent light, they initiated their escape. Elias, cautiously unlatching the rear portal, meticulously scanned the distant tree line. Nothing. They crept towards their conveyance, their hearts pounding a frantic rhythm. The engine ignited. A wave of profound relief washed over them. They accelerated down the gravel track, desperate to leave Whisperwood thicket behind. But as they attained the main thoroughfare, a figure materialized from the dense woods, standing directly in their trajectory. It was Silas Stonehaven, his smile wide, his eyes gleaming with a terrifying, predatory hunger. He brandished a rusty, archaic cleaver, its blade glinting ominously in the nascent sunlight. Elias swerved violently, narrowly averting impact, sending the conveyance careening into the roadside ditch. The sudden, jarring impact propelled them forward, the protective airbags deploying with a violent hiss. Dazed, Wren looked up to behold Silas approaching the damaged vehicle, his smile unwavering, his gaze fixed. Behind him, emerging from the dense tree line, were the remaining members of the Stonehaven clan, a silent, menacing procession. They bore crude implements, sharpened stakes, hook sickles, and more archaic cleavers. Their countenances were devoid of emotion, their eyes fixed upon Elias and Wren with an unnerving, collective intensity. They were the bounty, and the Stonehavens had arrived to claim their due. Elias, recovering with remarkable swiftness, attempted to re-engage the conveyance's engine, but it remained inert. He looked at Wren, his face a mask of grim determination. "Flee, Wren," he bellowed, forcefully pushing open her door. "Flee!" He seized a fractured branch from the wreckage of the conveyance and confronted the advancing clan, a desperate, ultimately futile stand. Wren scrambled out, her limbs burning with exertion, and plunged into the dense thicket, the sound of Elias's desperate struggle and the Stonehaven's guttural shouts gradually receding behind her. She ran blindly, branches lashing at her face, thorns tearing at her garments. She possessed no knowledge of her destination, only the imperative to escape. She had to survive. For Elias, for herself. She ran until her lungs screamed for air, until her legs buckled beneath her. She collapsed behind a thick cluster of ancient oaks, gasping for breath, tears streaming down her face, mingling with the grime and sweat. The thicket was silent once more, save for her ragged breathing. Had she escaped? Was Elias? Then she perceived it. A faint, rhythmic percussive sound. Closer this time, and a low, guttural growl that seemed to emanate from the very earth beneath her, vibrating through her bones. It was not the Stonehavens. It was something else. Something ancient. Something infernal. The thicket itself seemed to be constricting, the venerable trees whispering her name, beckoning her deeper into its suffocating embrace. She looked up, her eyes wide with unadulterated terror. Standing before her, partially obscured by the ethereal mist that had suddenly risen from the forest floor, was a towering, shadowy entity. Its form was indistinct, shifting, amorphous, but its eyes glowed with an infernal crimson light, burning into her very soul. It was the Shadow Patron, the entity with whom the Stonehavens had forged their unholy pact, and it had arrived for its bounty. She tried to scream, but no sound escaped her parched lips. She was paralyzed, ensnared in the demon's terrifying gaze. The last thing she perceived was its massive, clawed appendage reaching for her, its colossal shadow engulfing her completely. The thicket swallowed her whole, another offering to the ancient evil that lurked within Whisperwood. The silence that followed was absolute, a chilling testament to the forest's insatiable hunger. The Emberwood Retreat stood vacant, a stark monument to a honeymoon tragically truncated. The conveyance, mangled and abandoned in the roadside ditch, slowly succumbed to the inexorable march of the elements, another forgotten relic of those who dare to penetrate too deeply into the heart of the thicket. The Stonehaven clan continued their existence, their fields yielding abundant harvests, their progeny robust, their countenances adorned with wide, unsettling smiles. The bounty had been plentiful. The Crimson Covenant had been meticulously honored. The legend of the Whisperwood thicket grew, a cautionary tale whispered among the scattered communities surrounding it. Travelers learned to avoid the winding track, to steer clear the ancient, gnarled trees that seemed to watch with malevolent intent. Yet curiosity, or perhaps desperation, always led some astray. A lost hiker, a couple seeking a secluded getaway, a group of thrill-seekers daring to explore the forbidden. The thicket welcomed them all, its embrace cold and final. The Stonehaven clan, outwardly a picture of rustic charm and prosperity, continued their grim work,